Russell Singleton is a physician assistant at Tripp Family Medicine in Twin Falls, joining us this morning. And we'd like to point out, too, as well, Dr. Tripp's office and the staff, they're still looking for new patients. And as a patient, they can generally, remember, generally is a descriptive word, generally see you on the very same day if you call early in the morning with a medical issue. They try otherwise within 24 hours. The office is located on Fillmore Street in Twin Falls. You'd find it directly across from the main post office. And they have a wonderful slogan, life's too short not to feel good. Actually, we're going to talk about things that make you feel good today, too, as well. Bill Colley with you on Top Story as well. On News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're at 20. It's 8:34. First of all, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here.
We Can we tease a little bit of the program that we're going to hear some musicianship a little later?
Yeah, I am going to take advantage of this very unique opportunity on this very special day to share a little something with my
But
Valentine.
music can make people feel good, too,
Absolutely, and that's kind of what we're
unless
talking
you're
about.
listening to Paul Simon.
Well, we'll talk today about what makes you feel good, especially when it comes to love and affection. We're going to talk about the science of attraction. So, I've got some notes from a paper by Dr. Helen Fisher from Rutgers University. So, we'll talk a little bit about the biochemistry of love and attraction and get everyone ready for their Valentine's Day.
I have a friend, and she's just a friend, but I used to know her from way, way back. She lives in Seattle, and she talks always very clinically. Well, she worked in a clinic for a long, long time, and she'll always tell me that it's all about your endorphins. And she says, love will make your endorphins fire. And I hear that. So I know that I hear the reference to endorphins. I don't know what they are, though.
Well, what we're going to actually talk about today would probably be better classified as monoamines. And these are hormone, I guess, chemicals or molecules that kind of bridge the gap between the neurological system and the endocrine system. It's how your brain communicates with the rest of the body. So we'll be talking about hormones like testosterone and estrogen, but we'll also be talking about things like dopamine and serotonin.
People who there was a event a couple of weeks ago in Twin Falls. One of my coworkers was talking about it called speed dating, and there are going to be moments where people meet someone else and nothing happens. And then there are those moments where people meet and it clicks. Sometimes it can click immediately. You see someone from across the room. Other times you may know someone for 6 months, a year, and all of a sudden it clicks. Why such a disparity?
Well, Dr. Fisher divides love or I guess attraction into three basic categories, and so we could probably identify us as experiencing one of these particular categories at any time towards any person or group of people. The first one is lust, and that's driven by our reproductive organs. It's driven mostly by testosterone, but estrogen to a degree drives that as well. The other phase is attraction, and that is where the dopamine, the norepinephrine come in. But the last one is attachment, and we'll talk about oxytocin and vasopressin, those bonding hormones. So it depends on the relationship, it depends on the context, but in any one of these categories, which I think could be applied to probably almost any relationship, there's some chemical communication going on within the brain.
There was a professor of mine in college who was sharing with us that research also shows that if you live in a reasonably populated area, there's likely someone within 5 miles of where you live who you could technically fall in love with, because so many people think it's like the Middle Ages ideal of this, that there's just only one true person out there for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question, and there's probably yeah, a deep answer there. We could pontificate on that for a while. I believe that you probably could have a loving, supportive relationship with more than one person. However, at this point, I have to say that I found my true one and only love. But but generally speaking, I think it's possible to have those feelings of attraction towards different people, or at least more than one person.
And I think that for a lot of us, when you actually do meet that person, they do become the one simply because you don't feel you have any need to look beyond that.
Well, the brain starts to fire its reward pathway. We start to get feedback from dopamine, and in much the same way we can become attracted and even addicted to things that we like. from food to experiences to illegal drugs, we can have that same connection, that reward, and maybe even that addiction to people, to the point where we're having withdrawals when dopamine levels are falling. We're away from that person. It's possible to have a similar withdrawal type syndrome.
I know I talked to an old college era girlfriend one time, and it turned out we both, after we parted, had similar withdrawal symptoms. We were depressed for a while,
Hmm.
but life went on, and then we both rebounded, went other directions, and the like. So apparently, that's all related to that physiological. There's a recovery that takes place.
Yeah, at least to a large degree. The brain is the term we use in medicine is plastic, meaning it's adaptable. It's going to change and find ways to do things with greater efficiency. And as they say in in love, time heals all wounds.
We've got Russell Singleton in the studio with us. It's 20 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Trip Family Medicine, Better Health with Trip Family Medicine this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And if you're going outside, you might want to take a jacket. It's 22. Our guest is Russell Singleton, and what he's doing is he's warming up over here. Uh, this is what you have to do when you're actually at open mic night. You got to adjust the seat. You got to make sure you're. Pavarotti used to take a teaspoonful of, he said, honey before he would sing. So I tried that one time. I have to admit, I took like a bit of honey before I went on the air. Could barely talk. So I don't know if it's.
Seems like it would gum stuff up.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. People, we were just talking off air about people who've been together a long time. Uh, Obviously, you're still relatively young, so we can't say you've been together for decades with your wife. But you've been married a long time.
Actually, we're gonna hit a decade this year.
So that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's longer than most restaurants are open.
Yeah, we got married really young, actually. I guess you could say it was just love at first sight.
So there was some support for you while you were going through school and all of that.
Yeah, she was my sugar mama for sure. It's kind of a long story, and I don't want to embarrass her too much. But yeah, we were quite young when we met. She was a freshman, and so she was 18 years old. I was only 21 or 22, and we were, dated for about 6 months and fell madly in love, and we're married.
And I know people like that too that met when they were in grade school and they're still together. They were in the third grade and they clicked and still together after all these years. God bless them, because I know there are peaks and valleys and a lot to overcome in life, challenges.
Yeah, and she does more for me and for our family than I'll ever really be able to express. And so I wanted to.
I didn't know that Russell Singleton, by the way, was a musician.
Well, I guess we'll have to judge that when I'm done. That remains to be seen. It may be premature, Bill,
Well,
to,
you
to say
actually
that.
you have a number you're going to perform.
I do. So well, first of all, I need to say I had to leave a little bit early today, so I didn't get to have breakfast with my other Valentine, my little 4-year-old Gracie. So Gracie, I'm sorry, sweetie. I love you. I hope you have a good day. But this is for my lovely wife. We've been married for nearly 10 years, to whom I give all my lovin'. So, without further ado, close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my love into you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing, and hope that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my love into you. All my lovin' I will send to you. All my lovin', darling, I'll be true. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. lovin' I will send to you. All my lovin', darling, I'll be true.
Russell Singleton, and he'll be performing 3 nights a week. I have to tell you, part of our discussion, we talk about love, might also have to deal with jealousy, and I'm always jealous of people who have multiple talents because I don't. Uh, but this is so. All of these things, love. There's an old song I remember from the great English singer Vera Lynn, where she sings about love and hate and how these things can be so related. But the science of love, as you've been discussing some of the aspects of it, we were talking off air. When you meet these people who are together for 50 or 60 years, are they still having the same chemical reactions, or is it something else that's developed?
That's a good question. I think brain chemistry definitely plays a role, especially later in a relationship. Those attachment hormones, the oxytocin, the vasopressin, those are the bonding hormones. Those are the hormones that we see start to form lasting relationships, even from birth. In fact, childbirth, which isn't typically thought of as very romantic or or it's not romanticized very often. That's where the mother really starts to feel that bond with her child, and it's largely because of oxytocin. Breastfeeding does the same thing. The physical contact of intimacy is the same way. So husbands and wives, honestly, if you're getting um, down there or up there in years of your relationship, and maybe you're not feeling those same attractions, ask yourself, when's the last time you had some physical contact? Meaning, when did you last hold your wife's hand? If you want to sweep her off her feet, and I hope my wife isn't rolling her eyes as I give this advice, because she's thinking, yeah, right. Go home and just give her a hug. Give her a long hug, and when she tries to pull away, just hold it a little bit longer, and she'll just melt in your arms, thanks to oxytocin.
We've got a quick email, and it's written in like 30-point type, and it says "Bravo" about your musical number a few minutes ago. So obviously, you've reached somebody out there this morning. Talking a little bit about this long term. There are some people. There's that line you get where people say, "Well, I saw that someone, and my heart skipped a beat." Sometimes, when you've been separated from someone for a while too, that I guess you really, really are. If you're truly in love, first sight of them, for instance, there's a sense your senses start to react, or their voice. Any number of these things can have some sort of an impact on you too.
Well, I think for centuries, that's why mankind believed that the heart really was the source of love, because of that physical reaction. Your heart rate increases, you feel some palpitations, you feel a little bit giddy, a little bit euphoric. It's easy to think that those feelings are coming from inside the chest, from the heart. That's where you feel them. But I think that probably has more to do with another monoamine, another chemical messenger, norepinephrine, which is actually the same chemical that we see play into the fight or flight response. Um, and you can see the similarity in the reaction. Heart rate increases again. You become more acutely aware of your surroundings. Vision sharpens, and uh, historically or biologically, you're preparing to either run from a danger or engage it. But because it's the same hormone playing a role in attraction, you get some of those same symptoms. It causes a heightening of awareness and heart rate, etc.
The whole cartoon image and things that have grown up around Valentine's Day are of a fellow who is shooting people with a bow, and they get struck by the arrow, and they're suddenly in love. But when you mention all of a lot of this is so biological, is it possible that science someday will be able to turn it on and off like a switch?
That's a great thought, and I yeah, I don't know. I think science continually is moving forward. Thankfully, we're learning ab- about new things all the time. I mean, just a couple of months ago, maybe closer to a year, we discovered that the lymphatic system uh, is actually uh, inside or around the brain. We're talking like breakthrough type of discovery. Like textbooks need to be rewritten. We previously thought the lymphatic system did not go into the skull or into the brain, and we just only barely discovered that it did. So yeah, who knows what science is going to come up with down the road? I think we're still pretty early.
There was a man in my hometown when I was growing up, and apparently that he had been madly in love with a woman, and the relationship somehow ended tragically. And people around town would talk about it in very hushed tones, and they would essentially leave him to his own thoughts. If you saw him in the diner, he'd be quiet and he'd be sitting there and he'd be having his breakfast, and people just they knew that he was in his thoughts and they left him that way, but they left him that way for years. And I sometimes worry about people in those situations. There's the example of the character Curly in City Slickers, played by Jack Palance, and mentions that he had been in love once when he was much younger, and then just never felt that anybody could replace that individual. Are these instances where people might need a little counseling?
You know, I think that could be very true. We haven't yet talked about serotonin. It plays a role in attraction and in love, but we typically associate serotonin with depression. People who and actually this may not be as clear as we once thought it was, but people who have um, atypical or maybe unhealthy levels of serotonin, whether high or low, will be depressed. OCD is another example. Well, attraction causes serotonin levels to go lower, similar to someone with OCD, for example. And so there's a lot of crossover, and after a significant relationship, there can be significant shift in some of these hormones that were already potential drivers of things like depression, anxiety, etc.
As we get older, and I'm sure that if you've been in a relationship a long time, a lot of these biological factors are going to recede. But I think for the people who actually have some success, it's the fact that on days like today, they try to remind the other person that they still care about them, whether that be berries or flowers or going out to dinner. Uh, but I'm sure that at some point that any couple who's been together 50 years, there's the old line, they just endured.
Yeah.
That a lot of this will pass. That initial feeling of really being in love, and that everything seems brighter, smells better, will pass at some point.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wish we could do another segment where we brought in a panel of newlyweds and maybe those who are in their golden years just to kind of pick their brain, see how they would respond. Because I'm willing to bet there are probably some of those who feel just as much in love at now after 50 years uh, than that they did when they were first married. However, medically speaking, when it comes to physical attraction, when it comes to libido, I do commonly see that change. It's not uncommon for people in their sixth, seventh, and even eighth decade of life to still be sexually active, and that's totally healthy and appropriate. But sometimes we see testosterone levels start to decline in a man pretty early on, and we see things like low libido, lack of sexual desire, impotence, or ED. But sometimes we forget that women also have testosterone, and testosterone also drives some of those feelings of, Dr. Fisher would call it lust, but sexual attraction. So that's clearly one thing I see in my practice as far as long-term relationships go.
I uh, I wanted to point out Russell Singleton is our guest from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls, coming up on 8:55, and we're at 23. And this whole discussion is related to Valentine's Day. For people who are tuning in, I think a lot of the questions they do have is just how long is this going to last? Because sometimes you get into one of these relationships, and you're so much on cloud nine. There's that fear that that cloud is going to just be pulled out from under your feet someday. That's where the psychological, I think, effort starts to come in, where you've got to realize I got to work at this at some point.
Yeah, Bill, I think you nailed it. I'm certainly no love expert, and I try and
You could
show
you could start one of these programs where you could dispense advice
Dr.
to people.
Love.
Yes.
Oh, it'd be PA Love. Actually, I don't want to misrepresent. I don't want anyone complaining to the Board of Medicine. Um, I think you hit the nail on the head. You have to work at it. I think people fall out of love not because of chemical changes. Those are probably the result of behaviors. They get complacent, they get comfortable. Ask yourself, how often do you still go out on a date night? How often do you again hold hands? How often do you just hold your spouse for a while without thinking about, needing to put your bag down first, or, getting a snack when you first walk in the door. So I think if we were more willing to work at it, if we took more responsibility, myself included, that we'd see relationships um, last a lot longer and thrive. And I think the last thing I'd say about that is selflessness. That if we can achieve putting our partner's needs and desires above our own, I think that would ensure any relationship many years of joy.
The newspaper columnist, the syndicated columnist Cal Thomas, is an acquaintance of mine from several years ago, and so we're Facebook friends. And his wife died tragically about 15 months ago after a very long battle with cancer. And Cal is, I think, 76 now, maybe 77. And the other day he posted a picture on Facebook of him offering a ring and proposing to a new woman in his life. So even at his age, though, love can strike again.
Absolutely. I think that is absolutely wonderful. For those of you who may feel kind of bashful about it, I have plenty of 60, 70, and 80-year-olds who come to talk about their sex lives. And that's great. I'm proud of them. I'm happy for them. So, excuse me. So don't think that just because you're past 50 or 60 that you can't have a romantic part of your relationship.
I was going to say that some things do help though on a day like today. Maybe go out to dinner, and that will maybe rekindle some of those feelings or strengthen them.
Yeah, I'm a bad example there. I'm the kind of guy who likes to go out just before or just after Valentine's Day, fight the crowd and get get
It
the
will be a
quiet.
little crowded today.
Yeah, yeah, and thankfully my good wife knows that that's not me trying to avoid Valentine's Day. I I'm all about avoiding crowds and getting a better deal.
Just take a
So
walk along the canyon.
that sounds great.
That would be for a lot of people very, very romantic, and they could do that, and then they could go back maybe Friday or Saturday and actually do the Valentine dinner.
Yeah, I think it's great. I don't speak for all women, but I think they would love to see effort more than anything.
Right, right.
I don't think results are quite as important as effort.
But honey, there's a ball game on right now. Oh, wait a minute, that's me. Uh, anyway, Russell, thank you very much today, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll have to have you bring the guitar in a little more often.
Well, I just want to throw out there that Jeremy Daly plays guitar too, so we might come back and do a duet
Oh.
one of these days.
You guys have to start doing this at the office more often, too. Coming up on 9 o'clock news in just a moment, you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. One more hour of Top Story is just ahead following news from Fox.